Again, a picture speaks 1,000 words. I'll try not to overdo it here. But here's the Netherlands, the Benelux countries, so-called, Holland, Belgium. Huge problem with ecstasy. The manufacturers, worldwide suppliers of ecstasy around the world do incredible damage. It's in places like Afghanistan, where the heroin trade is funding the Taliban. It's in Colombia, where we see the FARC and the AUC and paramilitaries funding their activity, and it's across the border, where the Gallo Fuentes and the Beltran Leyvas and the Sinaloa cartel fight over the million-dollar profits. What we're talking about is an industry, and a global industry. And I think sometimes we get lost on this, that we've locked up small-time, non-violent users. That's certainly not the aim of my agency, but this is 23 metric tons of cocaine seized in the port of Manzanillo that came in from Colombia. This is an industry of criminal predators who prey on the weakness of humans for profit. And if you could legalize this and snap your fingers and we change our policy tomorrow, the people that are in this business are not dusting up their resume and going to work in the corporate world. We've seen it. We've seen it with the Arellano Felix brothers over in Tijuana. They're going to be out doing extortion rackets and kidnappings and others. What we're really dealing with is a class of professional predators. And what this is really about, you know, the drug du jour may be methamphetamine or cocaine, but what separates our society from anarchy is law enforcement and collective security. This is the largest cash user in the world, happened in Mexico City. $207 million in cash, located in one place. And the individual that was selling this, Zenli Yigan, wasn't selling the finished drugs. These were the precursor chemicals to manufacture methamphetamine. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime estimates that the global revenue from the drug trade is $394 billion with a B. Now, that used to be a bigger number. Now I guess that represents about half a stimulus package. But it's a lot of money, and it buys a lot of these weapons that are going south into Mexico, that are going into Colombia, that are used to murder people and to undermine democratic governments, diminish respect for the rule of law, diminish people's confidence that their governments can protect them. And it is funded through the drug trade. I apologize for the graphic nature of the slides. You probably see this all the time on the news here, but this is what's happening. And it's happening not just in Mexico. It's happening around the globe. It's happening in West Africa, where they've murdered the president and the chief of the army. It's happening in Colombia, in Burma, in Thailand. You know, we went to war on 9/11 after 3,000 people were killed. 38,000 people die every year in this country as a direct result of drugs. 38,000. 7 million are classified by the Centers for Disease Control as people who are substance dependent, hardcore addicts. 27 million drug abusers. And by anybody's estimate, at least hundreds of millions of people who are affected by crime and violence and looking at people, loved ones and their families who squander their lives and their human potential and dignity. In many ways, we can talk about drug traffic, the drug epidemic, as a weapon of mass destruction. Certainly a weapon of mass effect, A, B, C, and D. This is a receipt. It was seized in Afghanistan from the Taliban. And I think you can read, but basically, the Taliban, like the FARC and the AUC and others, are bankrolling international terrorism on the backs of the drug trade. Get this slow. Can you just hit the button for me there? I think this one is hung up. Spacebar, maybe? Houston, we have a problem. Okay. And lest we think that this is a, we have another problem. The photo that's in here is a result of the the terrorist bombing in Madrid. A local cell, fans of Al-Qaeda, but not really members of it, spent $50,000 in funds they derived from the local sale of MDMA and hashish. And they used that to purchase the explosives that created the problem in Madrid. Mind controller. Here we go again. You know, I will wrap up in the interest of brevity and trying to get to the questions by telling you that honest people of goodwill can have disagreements about the appropriate response to the problems of drug abuse and addiction, and whether we need to do more of one thing or another, whether it's law enforcement, treatment, education, and prevention. I will also tell you that as somebody who has just completed 30 years in the field of law enforcement, I'll be the first to admit to you that law enforcement cannot be and will never be the total response to this problem. We must have education, treatment, and prevention. But most of the people who end up in treatment don't go there voluntarily. The highest prevalence of people who go to treatment go there because they've been arrested. This is a very serious problem. It needs a serious response. Left unchecked, and I think that that's what we're seeing now are the heroic actions in Mexico of the government of Mexico, realizing that these trafficking organizations have become so powerful that they rival the state in power. And the reason that the government of Mexico is so aggressively taking a stand to break the power and impunity of these organizations is not because they want to assuage the gringos, or they want to make us feel better, or they're worried about addiction in the United States. It's that these organizations are attacking the state itself. And that left unchecked, we would have very little control over what they're doing. There's reason to be very optimistic. Here you see the dots are where the known terrorists are, the arrows, the global drug flows. I think it speaks for itself. What I would say is that there's plenty of room to be optimistic. We can either argue that the glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Many would argue that Plan Colombia was a dismal failure, that we spent billions of dollars and cocaine is still coming out of Colombia. Well, I share a different view of that. 15 years ago, somebody would have told you that the Colombian National Police would be a model of law enforcement in the hemisphere. I would have probably been belly laughing on the floor. They are today. A very few years ago, let's not forget that they blew Avianca Airlines out of the sky, that they attacked the Supreme Court and murdered Supreme Court justices, that they controlled the DMZ, or the so-called Despeje, twice the size of New Jersey, or roughly the size of Switzerland, where the government dare not go to fight these drug traffickers. Today, in 2009, the government controls every province and every department in that country. There are still drugs flowing from Colombia, and I dare say that there probably will be forever. But the government has got control, and there is a law enforcement solution. And so what I would tell you is that while law enforcement is not and cannot be the total answer to the problem of drug abuse in America or around the world, it must be part of the answer. The other things that are mentioned, the other things that are necessary, can't work if the trafficking organizations who peddle poison for profit are allowed to run amok. Thanks, and I look forward to taking some questions.